This is about a collaboration to exhibit the Harvey Milk Archives in Flight. We have here today is Christina Moretta, who's a photo curator at the San Francisco History Center, San Francisco's public library, and the official archives of the city and county of San Francisco. Its San Francisco Historical Photographic Collection has the San Francisco Historical Photographic Collection has over 2 million visual material items documenting San Francisco and the Bay Area. Notwithstanding the specificity of her job title, she wears many professional hats, that of an archivist, appraising, acquiring, arranging, and describing archival collections. That's of a rights manager, helping filmmakers, authors, curators use and publish the visual gems of the archives. That of a librarian, unraveling the mysteries of San Francisco, just a bit more of each reference query. Her most recent hat is that of a city worker, with her deployment as a COVID-19 case investigator, contact tracer to assist Department of Operations Center COVID-19 contact investigation team. Mike Levy has been the digital imaging specialist digital imaging specialist for the San Francisco Public Library since 1995, utilizing both flatbed scanners and the DT camera to digitize archival material. He has been involved in a range of different in-house and outside agency collaborative digitization projects, as well as the library's service of providing digitized image files to the public on demand. He's very excited to have assisted with the research and implement of the soon-to-be launched Ilodor digital asset management system, their new dams, and is looking forward to a new platform for housing the library's digitized collections. He's also a member of the web services team, which maintains the library's website. Kai, I'm not going to do your last name justice, so forgive me here. Kai Kamerer is the curator of photography at the San Francisco Airport's SFO Museum, the AAA accredited museum located in the San Francisco International Airport. The SFO Museum currently has 6 galleries dedicated to the exhibition of photography, with expansions planned through 2026. Kai is responsible for the curation and production of approximately 30 photography exhibitions annually. Prior to joining the team at SFO Museum, he worked at the Museum of Contemporary Photography in Chicago, Illinois. Recent exhibitions include Richard Barnes, Murmur, Anastasia Samoylova, Landscape Sublime, which is Mustafa Abdulaziz, Water, and Mimi Plume. What is remembered? Additional information about the SFO Museum's photography program can be found. Someone's going to pop up a link to that somewhere along this talk as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn my camera off, let you folks do your thing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kai Kamerer with SFO Museum.
Hello, I'm Christina with the Photo Archives. And I'm just going to add beforehand, I just want to, my sidebar already is that I'm on like COVID mindset. So a lot of what we're sharing today seems of the distant past, even though we're talking about 2019 and early 2020.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Levy, and I'm also from the San Francisco Public Library. Although right now I'm in my home, just so we're clear.
So first, we really wanted to thank Kate and Carol and Pete and everybody else from Digital Transitions for the opportunity to give a short presentation today, and to all of you for taking the time to join us. We'll be sharing some slides and speaking about a recent collaboration between SFO Museum and the SFPL for an exhibition called Harvey Milk, Messenger of Hope, which is currently installed in the new Harvey Milk Terminal 1. Let's see here. So I'd like to start off by offering just a little bit of context to SFO Museum for those of you who are unfamiliar with what we do at the airport. The museum is a department within the airport, and as such, we are a city entity, but we are also the only AAM accredited museum in an international airport. We have a staff of approximately 35 full-time employees. We also have a number of as-needed employees and seasonally a small staff of paid interns who join us from local university programs. Our facilities building is located just outside of the airport, close to the rental car facility, and our exhibitions areas are all located within the terminals. We have a dedicated registration department, conservation department, prep crews, a collection department, a curatorial team, and admin staff. Our exhibitions are essentially divided into 5 different programs. Those are aviation, general exhibitions, video art, photography, and student art. The flagship of our aviation department is the Aviation Museum and Library, the AML. Which is a faithful architectural recreation of the airport's 1930s passenger lobby at Mills Field. This is the image on the left here. The museum does not collect fine art, but we do collect objects and material pertaining to the history of commercial aviation. And we currently hold over 100,000 items in our collection. Upstairs here is a library dedicated to books, flight manuals, and other written material held in our collection. Downstairs is an exhibition space that features rotating aviation exhibition. Our general exhibitions program utilizes our 6 larger gallery spaces throughout all of the domestic and international terminals, and these are located both pre and post security. These shows consist of object-based exhibitions and are held in climate-controlled cases. These shows rotate approximately every 6 to 9 months and explore a large range of topics. For instance, we've done furniture or sculpture shows with the Noguchi Museum in New York. We've worked with the Kirk Hammett collection of classic horror and sci-fi art. And this image on the right is from a collaboration with a local lender, and it traces the history of surfboard design through redwood-shaped boards. Let's see. So we also have a video arts theater in the International Terminal, which features a rotating menu of 36 short art and animated films annually. Our photography program consists of now 7 dedicated gallery spaces located throughout the domestic terminals, again, both pre and post security. As Pete mentioned, we do about 30 photo exhibitions annually and work with a wide range of artists, local, national, international, and with a focus on contemporary photography. We also have 2 gallery spaces which serve our student art exhibition program. We work with many public K-12 schools, but also with adult education programs and nonprofit organizations such as Arts with Elders and the San Quentin Arts and Corrections program. So that's an overview of SFO Museum, and I'll hand it over now to Christina.
As mentioned earlier, the San Francisco, oops. There we go. As mentioned earlier, the San Francisco History Center is the archives for the city and county of San Francisco. We're in a unique situation with having a county archive located and supported by a public library system, the San Francisco Public Library. The archives program was created by the San Francisco City Charter and has been running for over 50 years. Although previously, before the establishment of the archival program, the city of San Francisco had deemed the library to be a safe place to deposit archives. So we've been collecting before being an archival program. The archives include anything and everything about San Francisco, but mostly paper-based. We have agency records, mayoral papers, correspondence, documents, books, maps, and plenty of visual materials. In the 1990s, the library created the James C. Hormel LGBTQIA Center, which at the time was just GLBT, which includes archives documenting the community. These archives are served through the San Francisco History Center, which you are seeing here. And when COVID isn't happening, the archives are open to the public with no restrictions. The library began digitizing in the 1990s, which my colleague Mike will expand on more. But before we got our DT Versa camera and setup, we did a lot of partnerships and outsourcing of digitizing with our non-photography materials, including Internet Archive and LDS.
And now just a little history for you. We began our library digitizing project in 1995 using a couple of HP ScanJet flatbed scanners, remember those, and a Nikon slide scanner to digitize mostly photographs and some slides from our historical photograph collection. At the time, we imported and displayed our photos into a proprietary system which had no internet access and could only be viewed on a few workstations hardwired throughout the main library. The vendor suggested that we scan our photos at 100 DPI for presentation purposes, since, as he put it, the computer monitor would only display a maximum of 72 DPI anyway. As a result, we still have a number of early scans that, when requested, need to be rescanned at our current standards, which now follow the NARA guidelines. A few years later, we migrated the photo database into our online book catalog, which, while not perfect, was the best solution available to us at the time. It was also web accessible, which meant that now more than 5 people at a time could find and view the images. And now, 20 years later, we are excited to be migrating yet again to our new Islandora dams, which will bring all of our various digital collections together under one roof and give them even better exposure. At my age, this will probably be my last migration. As technology has progressed, so has our equipment. After the HP ScanJet, we acquired an Epson Expression 10,000 XL with a transparency adapter, which was a breakthrough since we could now do high-quality scans of both opaque and transparent materials on the same machine. In fact, we still use an upgraded version of the same scanner. The DT camera came into practice around 3 years ago and has been a wonderful addition to our newly established Digi Center, which is dedicated to digitization projects. In using the DT camera, one of the challenges for me as a flatbed scanner user and a non-photographer was having to learn to think like a photographer. In spite of the learning curve, we have successfully integrated the camera into our existing workflow. And although I feel I'm still learning the finer points, it has been a lot of fun seeing the quality of resolution we've been able to achieve, especially from the larger 8x10 glass plate negatives we've digitized. As I like to say, we can take a negative and make something positive out of it.
In late 2017, the museum's curatorial team was informed that Terminal 1, which was at that point undergoing significant renovation, would be dedicated and named in memory of Supervisor Harvey Milk upon its first phase of reopening in 2019. The airport had identified a large-scale wall, about 400 feet in length, 30 feet tall, and visible to all passengers entering or leaving the terminal. This would be reserved for an exhibition dedicated to the life and legacy of Harvey Milk. So the image on the left here is an early rendering of the curbside facade of the new terminal, which is now what you'd see if you visited the terminal. And the image on the right is from when we got our first glimpse of the exhibition wall during a tour of the construction site in 2018. At this time, the wall was framed and we could get a sense of scale for the exhibition. Because it's a fairly vast space, we wanted the imagery and content to be large enough so that it remained visible to visitors on the far side of the walking path, about 50 feet away, but not so large that it would overwhelm visitors that wanted to engage with individual photos. We worked with many lenders for the exhibition, one of which was photographer and historian Dan Nicoletta. Dan was a close friend of Harvey Milk and Scott Smith, and one of the first employees at their camera store, Castro Camera. He graciously offered many images for this exhibition, but he also directed us towards the Harvey Milk Collection Scott Smith Archive at the Hormel Center at the San Francisco Public Library. This is how we were introduced to this collection, of which many, if not the majority, of exhibition images were sourced from. Over the course of 2, maybe 3 months in 2018, I worked with Christina and her colleagues at the History Center, all of whom were very generous with their time and incredibly patient with me as I reviewed nearly every box of prints and negatives in the archive looking for exhibition material. When the time came to digitize our selections, Christina suggested that perhaps there would be an opportunity to work with the cultural heritage system in the Digi Center. Given the scale of the show and knowing already that we would have to produce prints in a fairly large size, this seemed like the perfect option.
Kai mentioned, this project and collaboration focused on the archival collection of the Harvey Milk Archives Scott Smith collection. Harvey Milk was the first openly gay man elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Scott Smith was his partner and friend. The collection documents the personal and political life of Harvey Milk and the personal life of Scott Smith. Milk's political papers include issue files from the Board of Supervisors, as well as handwritten speeches and campaign literature. The photographs document Milk's and Smith's activity in the gay community. The Harvey Milk Archives Scott Smith collection was donated to the San Francisco Public Library by Elva Smith in 1996. Every year, this archive is in the top 5 most requested collections, with images from the archives used in documentaries, books, websites, a musical, interpretive signs, exhibitions, and even the Hollywood film Milk. When Kai started his project, he first asked if he could borrow pieces of the archives, the visual materials and ephemera, to reproduce at the airport museum. We do loan out items to museums, but we do not normally loan out materials for digitization. As the DT Versa system was new to the library, I jumped on the idea to use our fancy new camera. The DT camera is in the Digi Center, which Mike mentioned, and the Digi Center is in a physical space that had formerly been a public space in the library, our Patents and Trademark Center. So based on that element, the Digi Center is charged to allow for community partnership and collaboration. This all seemed like an easy, natural match. Soon after his request, I went down to Los Angeles for the Visual Resources Association conference in spring 2019. Carol was there and promoting the cultural heritage, everything, and was hosting the coffee tea break, community partnership event, finding opportunities to collaborate. This is where Carol and I hatched the plan. Wouldn't it be amazing if the DT Versa system was used solely to reproduce the visual materials and archives from the Harvey Milk collection for the new Harvey Milk Terminal? The idea was born over a sponsored cup of coffee. The original idea was to do a case study for cultural heritage, and this was published online in July 2019. In-house, back at the library, I had to do a lot of asks from administrators to make this collaboration happen. Knowing the inside ropes of who to ask, when to ask is always a good thing. Plus, having a partner in crime, Mike, who 99% of the time says, sure, let's go for it, really helps. I did have to do a little convincing since Mike and I had previously partnered with another city agency on a digitizing project that was a total flop. Thankfully, we rose above those challenges and used the learnings from the mishaps made. Really, the underlying difference between the two was awesome people, personality qualities, and skills.
As I was working with the team at the SFPL on research and image selection, the museum's team simultaneously started drafting initial layouts for the space. We felt that the exhibition content would be more accessible, especially to those unfamiliar with Harvey Milk's story, if it was organized in a loosely chronological manner. Because traffic flows in both directions at this location, we opted to organize the earliest content on the far left and far right sides of the exhibition wall, with later content concentrated towards the center. This way, visitors would be able to have a cohesive experience with the exhibition regardless of their direction of travel. The image on the left here is 2 sections of an early mock-up of the wall. So at this size, the wall would accommodate about 150 pictures at 3 feet in height. At about the same time we began working with Mike on digitization, the project team finished the drywall, and we were able to get out there and hang some proofs on the wall. So the image on the right here, unfortunately, doesn't offer much scale of the wall in the space, but this is about 36 by 55 inches, and it became pretty clear that at this size, the images would be overwhelmed by the scale of the wall and would feel pretty small to visitors walking on the far side of the path. Which I mentioned was about between 50 and 60 feet away. So we reshuffled the layouts and proceeded with about 100 images produced at 4 feet tall. I mentioned earlier that we worked with a lot of lenders on this project, and with that, many of the files we received were not ideal in terms of resolution. Others came in as physical loans and were digitized on our museum's Epson flatbed scanners. Because visitors could get really close up to the first 2 rows of this show, we organized the layout to use nearly all of the images digitized with the DT system on these first 2 rows so that viewers wouldn't be met with soft prints. The rest of the images were located on rows 3 and 4, which center height on those is about 12 and 16 feet off the floor. This way, any concerns with print quality would be essentially negated by the viewing distance.
One of the things I really enjoy about collaborating on projects is that they can be wonderful learning experiences. In our regular day-to-day digitizing, we more or less tend to work with the same types and sizes of materials. This is generally by design to help our workflow. Outside collaborative projects, on the other hand, often take us out of the normal routine, present interesting challenges, and can also involve problem solving. For this particular project with SFO, the Harvey Milk materials we would be capturing consisted of photographic prints of many different sizes, 35mm color slides, film negatives, posters, newspapers, and various typed and even handwritten documents. We would be utilizing both the 72mm and 120mm lenses, the lens extenders, capturing under the copy stand glass, above the stand on the surface of the wooden top, using the light box, and basically every combination of equipment that we had. One of the first challenges for me was while talking to Kai, he mentioned wanting to get a raking light effect on some Harvey Milk handwritten letters, speeches, and other documents to make them look visually interesting for the exhibit. Not being a photographer, I had no idea what raking light was. I was imagining a gardening tool being used to rake over the papers, but I knew it had to be something different. Most of you probably know this already, but I learned that raking light is an effect achieved from a beam of light cast at an angle across an object, causing shadows to emphasize texture, giving it a more three-dimensional look. Fortunately, Kai and his coworker Chad, who were both very experienced in photography and lighting, knew how to achieve this effect. And so we decided early on that our method of working would be, they would set up the lights and position the materials the way they wanted the shot to look, and I would co-pilot by setting up the DT camera, doing the pre-flight, taking the captures, and exporting the files. Watching these 2 experienced photographers at work was an enlightening experience. What was especially interesting to me was to observe how much trial and error and experimentation was involved. It felt like we were in a lab setting. To get the infamous raking light effect, as seen in this slide, Chad turned off one of the DT photon lights and adjusted the other photon light, lowering it, raising it, angling it, and using various methods of diffusion, such as scrims, plastic cellophane filters, and even holding a white sheet. As we took test captures, he would take light readings, make adjustments, and try different ideas until both Kai and Chad were satisfied with the way the shot looked. I really felt like I was getting a master's course in lighting and photography and enjoyed every minute of it. The raking light really did bring out the texture of the paper and made the documents come to life. For the smaller photos and slides, Kai said that he wanted the highest resolution possible that we could achieve. Camera height presets of 300 and 600 ppi, but we were able to lower the camera beyond those points until the objects filled the frame with the golden thread target visible. This gave a greater PPI and more resolution for Kai to create the enlargements he would need for the exhibit. We did the same with the transparencies on the light box, experimenting with the lenses and extenders until we got the maximum amount of image attainable on our equipment. Kai also wanted us to export the raw capture files for him to work with, and I realized we had never had that request before. So this was another first for us since we routinely export TIFFs for our own archives. I sent an email with a bunch of questions to Rudy from DT, who was extremely quick and helpful in his responses, from where I could find the IIQ files to questions I had about increasing PPI and pre-flight. Side note, it turned out that Rudy actually knew Kai and was excited that we would be working with him. After having such a great experience working with Kai and Chad, we felt more confident in taking on additional collaborations, and I'm happy to say that we've since had many more of these wonderful learning opportunities.
So after we received the Capture One files from Mike, we began prepping them for print. Retouching was pretty minimal here. Color was made incredibly easy by the golden thread system. And then we just had to dust the files, which I'm sure many of you are aware can take quite a bit of time. Let's see, the airport's project team had raised some concerns from the structural side of things about hanging 100 4x6 foot prints on this wall. So we opted to work with a local printer and have them produced as die sub prints on aluminum. This has since become a preference for us at the airport for these types of large scale installations because they're very lightweight and durable. In order to hang them, you don't need any sort of plywood or even metal strap backing. Let's see, a 4x6 foot print weighs about 15 pounds with the Nielsen channel on the back. On the right here are two prints being checked against our initial color proofs before being repacked and brought out to the exhibition site for install. The image on the left here is by, that you can see part of, is by Dan Nicoletta. It's a picture of the Castro neighborhood and Castro camera right in there. Then the image on the right is from 1978, Inauguration Day for Supervisor Harvey Milk, and that was made by a now Chicago-based photographer, Jerry Pritikin. The exhibition was installed in July of 2019 and will remain on view through the middle of next year. We actually don't have an image of this in the presentation, but the show is complemented by a smaller scale Phase 2 exhibition, which is located in a more intimate pre-security gallery. This one features approximately 40 images culled from the images displayed in this show. And then on our website, we do have some install images of the second phase if you'd like to see them. As of last month, and since being installed, this exhibition has been visible to just over 3.7 million visitors traveling through Harvey Milk Terminal 1. And so now I'd like to pass it back to Christina to discuss a couple of projects that followed this initial collaboration between SFO and SFPL.
This is Peter here real quick. We're kind of passing the 5-minute mark. We only have a few minutes left, but I'm fine with that. We're gonna probably eat a little bit into the question and answer time, but I just want to make you aware we're getting pretty close to the time allotment for this presentation.
Okay. Well then, very quickly, is that here in San Francisco, we love big anniversaries, even during a global pandemic, and before that. For San Francisco, 2020 marks the 150th anniversary of the Golden Gate Park. So all city agencies were encouraged to participate in that celebration. So in late 2019, early 2020, I reached out to do a exhibition with some photos from the archives based on our fabulous success of our previous collaboration. And so we unearthed this amazing gelatin silver print album with like never previously digitized photographs by RJ Waters. And so he was interested in reproducing that in gallery Terminal 3 at SFO. So you can see it here on display, or be brave and take a flight and go visit there. And so that, it was just like seamless and easy based on the success of that previous collaboration. And we had worked through all the steps. So it was like really simple to say yes on this collaboration. And Mike and Kai did digital image capturing of the whole album. So, and you can see some of the images just popped up, so you can go visit yourself online. And for us, the last piece is, it has also encouraged us, this collaboration with SFO has kind of reframed our thinking and being able to say yes to more projects. And this is an example of a project that we received a gift of the Tenderloin Times Archives, which is a community-based newspaper from the 1980s, 1990s. And as part of the gift, they wanted it digitized. So we had to like do a lot of kind of readjustments. We had tried one way, it didn't work by kind of a community partnership. Then we had our success with SFO. So then we were able to say yes to doing more. So, and boom. Questions?
Just a great presentation. One of my favorites of all the presentations that we received. I do think the speakers should turn all their webcams on, all three of you, for incoming questions. To kick it off, I could ask one. I have a question that I could just kind of kick this all off with. You folks mentioned, Mike, you mentioned a learning curve going from traditional flatbed or a traditional scanner to a camera-based system. Just curious how long it took you to start feeling comfortable with the software. I know there's quite a bit more buttons to push. Things to think about, thinking about it as a camera versus a scanner. I was just kind of wondering if you could just walk us through that just a little bit.
Yeah, we initially, of course, had the 3-day training from DT, and then a couple of us also took the certification, which was a week long, and that helped a lot because I have to admit, when I took the initial training, like learning anything, you don't quite know what kind of questions to ask yet, because you kind of have to use something and get some experience, and then you kind of discover things that you want to find out. So that certification training was very helpful. I have to say the like Rudy and I'm blanking on his name. Just your support staff has just been outstanding. Anytime we would run into any like little glitch, I would call and somebody would, walk me through trying to get stuff running again. I would say, just using it on projects has kind of helped me just become a little bit more comfortable with it. I think there's still a lot more I'd like to learn, but it's a fun piece of equipment to use, because as I mentioned, the resolution that you can be achieved is really pretty astounding.
Great, Mike.
And I get to do that every day, so it's wonderful.
That's great. Thank you. And I'll make sure to pass on your praise to our support team. They probably don't get enough of that in life. Usually people call them up and say, hey, I have a problem, fix it. So it's nice to get feedback that they're doing a good job. Here we go. Here's one from Kevin. How does SFPL intake outside imaging requests in terms of admin, billing, and so forth?
Where people make online requests, work with us. We have an ordering email, and we reproduce based on that request. I will say the library was closed to these services until maybe 2 weeks ago. So, so we're getting it back up and operating and training other people, since I work as a case investigator, contact tracer, and Mike is working from home. So we're kind of like starting from like ground zero again. But hey, we all are in different ways. But
that is true. It's a tough new normal for us all. I imagine you have a huge backlog as well. Okay, next question is from Ramona. Is there a community archival process included in any of the presenters' works?
we do two things. One is, I mentioned this Digi Center, and Mike had mentioned it too, that physical space where you were seeing our DT versus system setup. So that's what had been that Patents and Trademark Center. So we are supposed to use that space for partnerships and collaborations and community efforts. We have we have been using it that way-ish. So we've done a couple, we call them Shades of San Francisco, and we focus on a neighborhood or a underrepresented community group, and the members will bring in we do a call out, community members will bring in their original home photography or whatever, and then we'll copy those and add those to the archives. So we're hoping to build that out more. So that's kind of our community archiving process right now. That's happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we have some more questions coming in. Will this is from Stephen. Will this, I assume we're talking about the Harvey Milk exhibition. Will this exhibition travel?
Thanks for the question, Stephen. So there are no plans to travel this exhibition, and that's primarily because we're in the process of transitioning it into a permanent location. The Phase 2 exhibition that I mentioned, that is permanent, or at least very long term, depending on the architecture of the terminal. And the current exhibition that we presented about is actually, so that wall that I showed a couple images of, that is, it doesn't look like it, but it is a temporary construction wall, and behind it is ongoing construction work for the next phase of the terminal. So that will come down in, I believe, early to mid next year, and at that point we will be transitioning the entire exhibition to another location in Terminal 1. It's actually a customs walkway area that is, I believe, just shy of half a kilometer. It runs from the far end of the terminal and skirts the entire exterior to the international terminal. And that's where passengers of international flights will be routed to go through customs. And that's where this exhibition will live long-term after it comes down.
Nice. Kai, I have a question. I've been thinking about this, and I thought about it when I was personally there looking at the milk exhibit. What is the biggest challenge in your mind of doing an exhibit in a terminal? I mean, I've worked in museums for years in my past, and normally the exhibition department have a very planned out route for the visitor. You know, it's kind of like how they walk through the space, looking at the label copy. If they do an audio on top of it, it's very planned out. And I kind of was thinking, like, okay, how do you deal with that in a public terminal? because people can kind of enter it in the middle of it, the end of it, the beginning of it.
Yeah. So let's see. One of the biggest challenges, I think, curating for an airport is that you've got, in my mind, two types of passengers. Those who are they're in a rush. They got to get to their gate.
Yep.
And then those who have a lot of excess time. So trying to find work that finds a happy medium where it's still visually interesting to people who are walking by in a hurry, but there's enough meat and conceptual underpinnings there for people who do have the time to engage with it and learn from it. This exhibition in particular, we did know that people would, the way it's positioned in the terminal, visitors, whether they're coming or going, do have to walk past the entire wall. So we knew they would have an opportunity to engage with the entire thing should they take it. And that's why we opted to organize the material in a chronological manner from the earliest material on the ends, culminating in the center, late 70s when both Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone were assassinated. And so that way, visitors could engage with the entire chronology there, regardless of which way they were coming.
Nice. Well, thank you. I mean, you guys did a fantastic presentation. It's very timely, and when I saw it in the terminal, I was very much moved by the exhibit. So I do appreciate the hard work and the collaboration.